Okay, hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm very grateful that we're able to put the seminar on. It's actually been many months in the works, so I'm really glad we could go ahead. And particular thanks to Sondes for stepping up to do the speaking today. So today's talk is about voice technologies for children. Recently, I've had many conversations with friends who are stressed parents, and they're trying to juggle homeworking and schooling for their kids. So I think they might well bite off our speakers' hands for a conversational AI that would keep their darlings engaged and educated. This talk was originally meant to be a seminar to the AI group, but Dimitra and I thought it could be accessible to a lot more people and also had a much broader appeal because it'll touch on issues like safety, HCI, ethics. So I'm glad you could join us. If I say a little bit about Jen and Sondes, who have put together this presentation. Jen got her PhD from the University of York and has had over 12 years experience of teaching and training at HE level. And she's worked with places like Sheffield Uni, Leeds Uni and York Uni on research policy development, on impact and ethics. And now at DC Labs, she's working on the future impact of AI. And Sondes, who got her PhD in Milan, working on recommender systems, personalized search, and user profiling. And then before joining DC Labs in York, she was at City University of London in a lab that was funded by the Google News Initiative, working on human-centered AI for researching and verifying news. And in fact, she talked to us back in June to the AI group about that work. And so today's talk is about work that they have been doing together at DC Labs. So over to you, Sondes.
Thank you, Felix, for the introduction. And Jane is sending her apologies for not being able to join us today and make the talk with us. Indeed, this is a collaboration between DC Lab and the BFTA award-winning digital agency Jopoli. We won 30,000 to develop a technology, a chat tool that will allow children to safely engage with characters from their favorite TV show through voice-assisted smart devices such as Amazon Alexa or Google Home. Before going on with the presentation, I have to mention this is a collaborative work with an interdisciplinary team. It's not only me and Jen, there is James Walker and Liam from DC Lab, as well as Shannon from Cambridge University that came together to work on this, as well as a paper that we submitted recently. So the aim for the project initially is to develop a prototype tool and to make kind of consultancy for Jopoli to help them to develop this tool, taking into consideration all the ethical issues that could arise with such technology. So during this conversation, I will be going through the work that we have been doing the last months, and that's on reviewing both the technical aspect of conversational AI, as well as all the ethical consideration around dialogue system and conversational AI in particular, and trying to put all those together to provide a kind of roadmap or recommendation for a conversational AI designer for children. So with a focus on child-friendly technology in the context of creative industry. So let's start with what is conversational AI. Actually, it refers to all technology from chatbots to voice assistants that can imitate a human-like conversation. And in particular, conversational AI is the technology that uses machine learning and more specifically natural language processing to help imitate this kind of interaction and recognizing the speech and the audio as input. So there is a huge interest on using such a technology recently, and specifically for children between 5 and 16 years. And there is a lot of study that shows that this age group of children are in contact with voice assistants on daily basis. So the rapid growing field is attracting many research in natural language processing, information retrieval, and machine learning communities. For example, the SIGA year 2018 has created a new track of artificial intelligence, semantic, and dialogue to bridge the research in AI and information retrieval, targeting specially question answering systems and deep semantic and dialogue with intelligent agents, which are heavily useful for this kind of technology. So this increased attention came along with a big move toward ethicalization of AI that aims to tackle implication of this technology and make more efforts to address issue with respect to privacy, safety, security, and access. So our interdisciplinary team tried to map a way in which to consider both the social context and the social context within the technology development and supported by argumentation from within the literature. So what we have been doing so far is making systematic reviews in both the technical aspect of conversational AI and the social aspect of it, and put all of that together to make this kind of recommendation that I will go through them later on. So our main goal was to develop an ethical and a human-centered conversational AI that balance between AI innovation and ethical concerns. To do so, we start by reviewing the technical implementation of AI, because mainly the different methods of conversational AI, pose different ethical challenges. In order to understand these challenges deeply, we needed to address the literature review with respect to machine learning, natural language processing, and deep learning, and address each of the components and conversational AI architecture independently, and trying to map that to the ethical issues they pose. So here are the this picture can resume the main component of a conversational AI system, and as you can see, the system requires the coordination and integration of several discrete systems, subsystems, that perform pseudo-simultaneous tasks. A typical task-oriented dialogue agent is mainly composed of 4 modules, as illustrated in this picture. So starting by a natural language understanding module that identify the user intent and extract associated information. Then the dialogue management, or what we call the state tracker, that track the dialogue state and capture all essential information from within the conversation with a human being. The natural language module, generation module, it helped to convert the agent action into natural language response. So you can notice here that there is the automatic speech recognition we refer to as ACR, and TTS, text-to-speech module. Both of them are in direct contact with the users. So for example, the speech recognition, which is the process that translates the spoken utterance of the user into text, faces several sources of acoustic variability, which is caused by complicated interaction and speaker characteristics, such as dialect, stress. Those can be categorized into within speaker variable and between speaker variables. So things like momentary and longitude variation in the voice, due, for example, to emotional expression, illness, or age, and the between speaker variables such as the spoken language, the vocal tone, and the speech style. All of those factors need to be covered by the acoustic model to be representative of all potential speakers. And here we can notice the big ethical challenge that those may pose, going from privacy until inclusivity. So beyond the CI architecture, there is this approach that are generally categorized into domain-specific one and open-ended dialogues. Those as well poses another level of challenges. And so the task-oriented one who support the user in completing a specific task are mainly based on natural language processing technique, as shown in the previous picture. So in this picture, so actually, and the open-ended dialogue ones have benefits from, they are a fully data-driven system and have benefits from the advances in deep learning model and the pre-trained language models such as BERTs recently, and the availability of large conversational data sets and which have made the open domain dialogue system capable of generating content on a wide range of topics more available. So CI application for children may encompass both type of architecture, so the open-ended one or the domain-specific one. The question here is how to make this choice, and to do so, we had to go deeper and study the challenge that each of this approach may pose to the user. So as you see here, we have seen that this shift from the symbolic space, so all the approach based on natural language processing and semantic rules, to the neural space, all the approach based on neural network have been made to overcome type of a challenge like the challenge that can arise when user utterance fall beyond the scope of the dialogue follow on a domain, on a specific domain of expertise, and that's due to NLP component boundaries. On the other hand, for open dialogue system, which pose number of challenges like generating an informative response. For example, I'm not sure I understand. This is a sentence we hear very often from Siri, for example. Those type of challenges make the research goes towards hybrid models, because the CI application of children's mainly wouldn't, so for children, we wouldn't like to provide them with an uncertainty, with uncertain answers, which create a lot of challenge around how their personality grow up, their trust on the system they are using, and other issues. So as you can see in this picture by Jay and all, this shift between symbolic and neural space, it helped to reshape the conversational AI landscape by opening up new tasks and user experience that weren't not possible with older techniques. And this could be of a big opportunity for child-friendly system as well. So, as I said, there is a choice to be made here, and the design decisions are typically informed by the type of interaction the system seeks to support. For example, if it seeks to support a question answering system, or is a task-based system, or so on. However, there is the ethical consideration that comes into in here. And if you can notice that the most popular personal assistants in today's market, such as Amazon or Siri or Cortana, all of them are task-oriented bots. And this can only handle relatively simple tasks, which is in fact not what we are looking when we are working in a creative domain, as the attempt of our projects that want to enable the children to engage in a kind of fluent conversation with the CI system. So why we cannot adapt task or based or task-oriented system, CI, conversational AI, and why we should adopt an open-ended architecture? That's the question that we try to investigate. And there is a lot of cases as well that shows that open-ended system can be very challenging. And if you remember the Microsoft chatbot tie that turned to be a kind of racist and sexist chatbot, this is as well another consideration to be made when to choose open-ended dialogue systems. So to reply to this all concerns and questions, we try to go through the literatures and to see what is have been done so far. And one of the major findings that UNICEF, who is on the forefront of safeguarding for young people and their rights, has recommended that we should closely examine privacy, safety, security, and that's by providing by focusing on detecting harmful content, providing protections, and focus on location detection and biological and psychological safety. So to respond responsibly to this recommendation, a range of actors across all the AI community, and including scholar and agency, need to come together to engage with those concerns. In our work, we tried to draw on argumentation from within the academic literature and to identify 4 big themes for which we are trying to study the implication of CI on light of those ones. So those one including cognitive and linguistic development, for example, education for yes, learning and accessibility, moral care and social behavior, which is including civility, relationship, child-agent interactions, ethical, regulatory and legal aspect of voice agents for children, and that's including privacy and security. And a very important theme, which is the inclusivity, and that's about the gender, racial, and mainly we interested there to detect the bias, both algorithmic and data bias. Sorry. So for those 4 theme, as you can see here in this picture, we tried to draw or to identify a guiding questions that will help us to draw recommendation later on. And those questions were mainly about data, what data is will be collected through the conversational AI agents, how will the collected data be used, how far in relation to which regulation has the AI safeguarded children's safety and privacy, how do we develop a child-friendly and engaging at the same time CI, how should the artificial intelligence behave in that case, how do we reflect and meditate against bias, how do we ensure responsible innovation and use participatory design technique for that, what technology and approach should be adapted to provide moral care and direct pro-social behavior. So mapping these questions to the literature from both perspective, technical and societal perspective, we come up with a roadmap, a few recommendations. So an understanding of the domain and the problem that the agent aims to solve should inform the identification of possible ethical concerns and solutions. That's the main attempt here. So the second recommendation was about trust and fairness and inclusivity. So to ensure all of those, we recommend a participatory co-design approach that involves the users since the design process. And this is in this stage, we need to think about the user when they're deciding what is fair and equitable outcomes versus procedure. So we mean here that we need to study the children perspective on how they may trust this technology, what they made them find it engaging. And this can happen only through a participatory co-design approach. Then the designer of such system should ask what kind of system behavior could be harmful for the children, in what way, to whom, and why, as well as the normative reasoning underlying this statement. And as we recommend as well to have a clear and transparent strategy to safeguard the privacy, security, and right of young people. The users should be able to ask questions to their device about how their data is used. So in this case, the parents should be able to know where the data will be located and how this data will be used, and even exert marked influence to drive up demand for privacy-preserving technology. So challenge assumption of neutrality, so bias, considering approach to recognize and conceptualize and mitigate bias in NLP system. And from a technical perspective, to tackle this bias, there have been a lot of approach proposed in the machine learning field. We can, the fairness in AI, and AI fairness, sorry, by ABM. There were the FATE, F-A-T, fairness, accountability, and transparency, and ethic in AI toolkit. And here we recommend this type of technology to be used in order to ensure the fairness of the system. And here I come to the end of this talk. So thank you for listening, and please ask questions.
Sanders, thank you so much. It was a fascinating talk, and pretty much every 20 seconds I was trying to scribble down some questions because it just opens up so many so many issues. So I'll open the floor. If you want to, actually, I'll just remind people that the slides are available. So if you want to flick back, if something piqued your interest earlier on, and if you want to flick back to the slides, there is a link there in the chat if you want to ask Sanders anything from any part of the talk. But yeah, if you have a question, please just unmute and ask away.
Hello, Sanders.
Yes, I can hear you. Hi.
I put my hand up, but nobody responded to me putting my hand up, so I'm butting in. Thank you very much for an interesting talk. Forgive me if I come at this from a slightly naive point of view. I'm a sociologist, interested in human interaction. My question was to do with, so this issue of bias within machine learning, which we hear a lot about. It's a lot about those kinds of issues that you're talking about, gender bias being a prime one. It occurred to me that there could be an alternative bias, which is something like a bias towards adult conversation. So when, and again, forgive my naivety, but when one is generating dialogues when one is producing natural language. To what extent can you ensure that it's the kind of language and interaction that would occur between children or between children and teachers? It occurs to me that this informs the engagement question that you posed, which is how you include people in a classroom is probably different to the way that you would go about it in some other context. So it was a general kind of naive question, forgive me, about inclusion and forms of interaction which children might respond to, and how within your design you incorporate those kinds of ethical questions. I see it as an ethical question, but also for your design, it's an issue of engagement. I mean, you might ask a question of a child and not expect an immediate answer, and you might want to be more encouraging and pull out some of the kind of relevant elements to help them formulate an answer or whatever it may be. So forgive my naive question, but where does that? Yeah, that's where I was thinking.
Yeah.
In that you spoke to databases that the machine learning might be applied to generate open-ended dialogues, etc. Within that machine learning process, are you oriented to particular forms of social interaction, i.e. between children and adults, between children and children?
Okay, it's actually a very interesting question indeed, and there is not one way to answer to it. It's a really broad question. So let me explain two things that catch our attention in relation to that while we were preparing this work and doing our systematic review. So one side of the thing is related to the TTS, so text-to-speech module and SAR. So both of them have that challenge of how to detect the user intent, for example, from within the speech, but as well how to deal with different voices, different people with different dialects, people with different accents, and how to make this agent not only able to understand those differences and not be biased, for example, in capturing or in extracting the user intent from this audio. So, and the other challenge is about the data that will be used to handle this open-ended conversation. So in the level of the TTS and SCR module, we have identified the challenge, but not really how to deal with them. So we have identified the source of these challenges. I think I mentioned it during, but very quickly during the presentation, the fact that there is what we call source for acoustic variabilities. And the recommendation here is to consider all this type of variabilities. So those variabilities in terms of within speaker variables or between speaker variables, this is how we categorize them. But how to build that technology that is inclusive and can deal with this bias is still a big challenge to the machine learning and AI community. And there is a lot of ongoing work, and the end-to-end model seems to be very good and to deal with that, like by learning from a big data set with a lot of audio. So it learns from a lot of different voice tone or lots of different, it learns how to deal with the ambiguity as well of the speech and the semantic of the speech. But from the other side, and this related to the bias coming from the data. This can be as well generate bias into the dialogue, as you said. So if the data used is biased, it will reflect bias into the answers that the conversational AI agent will produce for the children. And this is a big issue in general in deep learning. And as I said, it has been seen through TAI, the chatbot TAI. So at the end of the day, what I want to say that, yeah, the architecture and the implementation of CI itself, it could produce a bias into the dialogue between the children and the agents. How to deal with this dialogue? There is a lot of research effort to be done there. And for the moment, the system that seems to be more promising are those one who are hybrid, so they're not end-to-end completely, but they apply neural network, for example, for speech recognition, but they apply more semantic and rule-based approach for dealing with the conversation content and how the conversation can be managed. So mainly on the conversation management module and natural language understanding module. I hope I don't have an answer, honestly, but I hope that was clear that it's an ongoing challenge, and there is a lot of work to be done with that for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks on this. Jacob has a question in the chat. Jacob, are you happy to unmute and ask the question, or I'm happy to do it on your behalf otherwise? I will ask it then. Okay, no worries, Jacob. Okay, so Jacob says, thank you very much. It's very interesting. I hadn't considered that so many social issues might spring up from CAI. Is there a risk with using CAI to teach children that it could limit their creativity due to the language processing being limited as it is? I feel that with the tech where it is now, there is little scope for a variety of answers to any questions that might be asked of children. So might it water down the originality of the children's approaches to the presented problems?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. It should be very interesting a study to be done by itself. But yeah, how to boost creativity using CI, or maybe the other way around, CI goes to stop the creativity of the children. I personally, as an information retrieval researcher, I see that is similar to what Google can make to us. It can help us to broaden our knowledge, or just by trying to simply get answer immediately through Google rather than read a whole book and learn more about it. That may reduce our creativity. So it's about how to use the technology. Again, is a design decision related to what the system is aiming to do. And it's then up to the designer how they want to make this CI system agent. So I believe, again, that a participatory design approach will help. So a co-design approach that not involving only the children, their parent, and their stakeholder, but as well as like teachers who know how to teach these young people, sociologists, people with interest in education, all together can help to design a system that does not limit the creativity of children. But it's really quite interesting thoughts, and yeah, I believe we should do some research there. Yeah.
Thank you, Jacob, for that excellent questions. Thanks, Sondes. Anyone else?
Could I perhaps follow up a little bit on Darren's question? he talked about the relationship between the child and the CAI, and whether that should be a sort of child-to-child type interaction or child to adult, I guess. And there surely is quite a important ethical question there. You know, an adult talking to a CAI has some idea of what's really happening. You know, that they're not talking to a real person, although clearly you mentioned anthropomorphization, but with children there could be problems with that. And you know, what should the appropriate relationship be? Should the child see the CAI as a figure of authority, or something more on a peer-to-peer level?
Yeah, this is very very important element in designing a CI tool. And indeed, that's part of the recommendation that we have worked on. And a lot of studies have recommended that the children should be aware that they are speaking to a technology. So speaking to an agent is not a human being. So their expectation wouldn't be the same, and their way of interaction wouldn't be the same as well. So a lot of research have proven that in the beginning, the agent or the system should introduce themselves as an agent. And when they cannot, some cases understand, so the system cannot extract the intent of the users from the speech, it should say, I'm not able to understand you. Can you repeat your question, please? And try to use a kind of formal type of conversation. So that's a group of researchers, or a category of research that recommend that. On the other hand, there is this researcher that, or this studies that recommend that to make the CI more engaging, it should have different tone. For example, it should be a female or male when it should speak with a certain tone or than others. And that's not only in the case of children, but with adults as well. For example, when providing news, it should be that sad news, it should be that specific voice tone and so on. So there is a big debate on when and when not making clear to the user that is in a conversation with an artificial intelligence agent that is not able to reply to our questions, or when it's better to adapt another approach while the conversation become more personalized and more engaging in some sense. But for the case of the children, we would rather recommend that it should be clear to the children that they are in conversation with a technology-based system, and it's not able to maintain a normal conversation or human basic conversation.
Yeah, then that seems correct, but still, I'm still not sure how you achieve that. If you said that it should introduce itself as an agent, but I don't even know if most adults would know what that meant.
Yes, I guess it's tricky how to introduce that an agent, but those kind of an informative response that the chatbot sometimes give us, it's a way to stress that they are agents. It's a way to highlight their limit of capabilities. So this researcher argue that we should keep those type of errors, and that will enable the user to understand the limits of this technology.
If I can feed into this for a moment with an illustration, perhaps. I had a summer placement long time ago as a student, which was unpaid, but I had to explicitly say that I take no orders from anybody there, because according to local law, if you took orders, that meant you worked for that person, which meant that you were entitled to some remuneration. And we do take orders from agents. My GPS, my sat-nav tells me where to go, which led my eldest tell me when she was, I don't know, 5, 6, she said, no, you shouldn't go there. You should go this way because the lady said so. And I had some interesting conversation whether, that voice was the car itself, somebody in the car, or somebody else, and so on. So it depends on the modality of the conversation. If the agent tells you what to do, then you will kind of assume that they have the authority and by implication the knowledge to tell you what to do, and that could contradict the kind of initial warning and kind of water it down if you say, I don't know everything, but I'm going to tell you for the next 2 hours what to do. So which is a difficult thing to arrange, because then there may be situations where you want to evacuate the house and you want to say you should leave the room now, and yes, you do want to assume that authority. So the balance, that is to say, I don't know everything, but I'm always acting in your best interest to the extent that I'm capable of, is a very subtle balance to explain to a child, I guess.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, I had a question. After listening to what Darren was saying, it reminded me of a book by a developmental psychologist or child, whatever. It's a parenting book by Dr. Gordon Newfield called Hold On to Your Kids. And anyway, it talks about how children have a need to attach. Attachment is an important need, and they want to attach to the parents, but often in society nowadays, they're attaching to their peers, other children. And that has then impacts on the child's mental health and the child's development. So the attachment with a parent being displaced onto others. So whether your AI is talking to the child as if it's another child, or whether it's talking to the child as if it's a teacher, or it's still the child is still going to be talking to an AI. It's not going to be talking to the parent, so it's not going to be getting that attachment. And so you had a lot of talked about a lot about the ethics of the behavior of the system, but I was wondering about the ethics of the kind of context of the system, the context it would be placed into, because it's inevitably going to be displacing. What interaction is it going to be displacing? Is it going to be displacing parental interaction? Is there anything about the design of the system, or how it is like integrated into the user's lives such that it's going to exacerbate or minimize that impact on the child's kind of attachment to their family?
Yeah, good question, thank you. So this project stands mainly to be entertaining. So the dialogue system will be entertaining for the child, allowing him to share some feedback about the show that he has been watching. So it's not attending to, in this specific case we're working on, we're not attending to replace the teacher or the parents and giving, like, for example, order or whatever, or teaching them, or it's not for educational purposes. So in this case, I see that is less challenging than if it was an educational context. And then, yeah, it will pose the question, how might the child perceive it, and it could be get attached to it as if it is his teacher or whatever. So we tried to study that through the fourth theme that we called moral care and social behavior. So we tried to study how this type of conversation can affect the moral health of a student and for the children and their social behavior. And we come up with a key consideration, which is about the level of a freedom versus constraint that is required over the natural language generation. So, for example, rule and frame-based approach involves tightly scripted dialogues and require the designer to devise appropriate response strategy for the potential direction the dialogue might take. And the end-to-end approach, the quality of the corpus would affect that and would affect the level of freedom and constraint in the conversation. So it's always challenging to deal with this issue. It's again an ongoing question, but we can, from considering what is the technology existing, trying to select the best, or trying to research how to make the technology fit into this question. So yeah, from some arguments from the literature, we can say it's just through the rule and through the freedom that we give in the natural language modules that we can deal with this kind of issues, but not 100% for sure dealing with them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Sandes. Rob, are you happy to ask your question?
Hey, yeah, no video, sorry guys. Yeah, I was interested to know how much the age range was for this, because I don't know if it's quite a young age group or if it's a higher age group. And my reason for wondering that is, when you're younger, your language tends to be a bit, let's say, more flexible. And I was wondering how much that would impact the CAI working effectively, and if you had a way of working around that, or if I missed that.
So the age is really important element, and yeah, a technology that is designed for, let's say, in this case, it's from 9 to 14 years old, but one is designed for like 9 to 12 is different, should be from one designed from like 14 to 16 years old, and so on. And it's, yeah, indeed about the children abilities and the language the children is using. And this kind of technology can be seen as a way as well to improve this linguistic capabilities. So a well-designed technology, let's say, will help to, in this case, of entertaining and sharing with the children, enabling children to share their thought. It will help them to have a bigger understanding, for example, for the theme that they are reporting on or they are discussing with the agents. They will learn from the agents probably new terminology. They would as well be able to express themselves in different way. And this is the most challenging part, how to enable the children to express themselves maybe in a basic language or more advanced language or whatever, and enable the system to understand and extract their intent from their speech. So we see this technology promising in that sense of helping the children to improve their linguistic skills. And yeah, in this case, again, there's from a technological perspective, there is this acoustic systems that should be very well designed, as well as a database that should be well selected and devised, which is the hardest part.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could ask a quick follow-up question to Rob's, are there systems out there which would sort of online adapt the level at which they're operating? So if somebody if one of my kids asks me for a good website for information on something, depending which kid asks me, I might point them to a different source, even though they might be asking about a similar sort of thing. So would there be a shifting, shifting of gears almost while the system is operating, when it realizes either by tone or by some other method that, at what sort of level it's operating?
So the answer to this is probably the personalization. So a personalization approach will be able to deal with the users in a customized way, and that's very challenging in the context of the children. So we have discussed that in our paper that I hope to share with you as soon as it's published. So we have discussed how the personalization would help in this case. So having a user profile, having profile of the children that the agent is speaking to at that moment would help the agent, in your case, to direct the users to the right source, giving the users age, backgrounds, knowledge, and many other features, probably preferences in some cases. So I believe as an information retrieval researcher, again, a lot on a personalized approach for CI that will help to deal with a lot of issues. However, is it challenging because of the consideration around privacy and safeguarding of the children. So to do a personalized approach, we should get the consent from the parent, but it's not enough because there will be a lot of data collected. And then again, that question, how we would use the data, but where the data is gonna be saved as well. So even though there is a solution, the solution has a lot of ethical implication, and then we have to choose, make the balance. What is the priority of the system again that we are designing? Is it helping to improve the linguistic capability of the children, or is just entertain them? And then trying to assess the challenge and the implication of that.
Brilliant, thank you. We've probably got time to squeeze in one more question if anyone's got anything. Aha. Okay, so Reese's mic unfortunately isn't working, so I'll do my best to read it out for everyone. This question is relating to discerning of the intent of the user's input. So building on the fact that if the AI is not able to recognize the intent of the user, it is then forced to inform the user that they have not understood the question. Is there more to this when considering work with children? For example, if the agent is, let's say, 90% confident that it knows the intent, this might be acceptable when talking to an adult, but do you need a lower threshold of confidence due to the implications of providing a misleading response that could affect a child's development or education?
Yeah, quite interesting one. It's really a discussion that have been going between us as well, in our team, and to again, that's related to one of the previous question, the level of freedom and the generation of the speech. So if we adopt a rule-based approach, if we adopt a semantic approach, we will be minimizing a lot of this kind of risk where the agent is not able to extract the user intention behind the request. However, that's still not enough, because defining a threshold of certainty, as we know all in machine learning or any AI technology, is based on measures, it's based on accuracy, it's based on precision, it's based on a measure that we use generally a ground truth data to evaluate them. So again, that's not enough, because there could be a lot of bias in the data that would affect, and the evaluation is not 100% accurate. And then how to define the threshold is not the solution, or defining this threshold is not the only solution that we should try to adopt. But for the time being, is the only way to deal with that is to base the conversation, the core of the conversation, the conversation generation model on a semantic and rule-based approach that will help to minimize all risks, and to just use all the deep learning model and neural network to convert speech to the audio to the speech and vice versa. So that's the best approach. However, yeah, there is a lot of challenges on that they can pose by such a system for the linguistic development, or even the development in general of the children.
Thank you so much. There are a couple of little things that have arisen, which are, it's nice actually. Jacob says, if we want to follow the progress, is there a way that we can keep in touch? You know, is there a way that we can follow your work in this field? What would you recommend on this?
Yeah, sure. I would be so happy to share with you all our paper. It's a journal paper that have more detail about all those like recommendation, but the themes. A great work done by Jen on the literature review around the ethical implications, so on. So this paper, as soon as it's published, we will try to send it and share it with all of our colleagues, as well as we have the Twitter account of DC Lab. So we keep trying to tweet about the projects, and we have a project webpage on DC Lab sites that you will be able through it to follow. And if you have any particular questions, you can send me email either to me or to Jane, and I will leave my email address for you to do so.
Fantastic, thank you so much. In terms of the recording, it is recording, so I'm very hopeful that once that's saved, I will make it available via the same page that this event was advertised on the CS website. So I think in the archive where there are video recordings, they appear on there. So that should hopefully be up there in the next few days.
Great.
Okay, so Sonia, let me say again, thank you so much, especially because I know you stepped in to do the whole talk at the last minute. Really, really grateful, and it's a fascinating talk. I don't know if people are able to unmute themselves and give a little round of applause. We could try that. Okay. That might be nice. Thank you very much for a great talk.
It was a pleasure to be here again and give this talk. Thank you for your interest in our work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, and thanks everyone for coming along. We'll see you later. Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye. Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao.